Hello and welcome to Talent Acquisition Trends and Strategy. I'm your host, James Mackey, and today we are joined by Nayeem Chowdhury. Nayeem, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we're pumped to have you today. And before we jump into it, could you share a little bit about your background with everybody?
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Everybody, I'm Nayeem Chowdhury. I'm based here in Houston, Texas. So I'm a senior global talent acquisition leader, 15 years of experience. I've worked with 3 Fortune 500 companies such as GE, Siemens, Halliburton. I'm very passionate about the space. I've driven project delivery and worked on complex TA projects, working cross-functionally, leading global remote teams in the areas of sourcing, candidate experience, recruitment, branding, data, and enhancing TA technologies with ATSs, CRMs, and other tools. I'm experienced in coaching and building teams, and I bring a very strong strategic customer and data-focused expertise when it comes to TA to help resolve legacy challenges, strengthen the brand, and help improve the people and culture, and ensure number one thing is ensure ongoing and future talent demands are met, exceeded, and most importantly, measured.
That's great. Right. Thank you for that overview. And I'm really excited about this conversation because I want to get a little bit more technical than we do on many of the shows and really dive into data and automation and leveraging technology for basically to be able to accelerate quality outcomes for companies that are hiring at scale. Particularly startups, growth stage organizations, right, that are aggressively expanding their team, the size of their team. So one, I would love to get your thoughts at a high level, how you think about data and talent acquisition. What should companies be focused on? And maybe we could just start high level macro, and then we can get into some tactical things that people can take away from this conversation on what they can implement, right?
Yeah. And I think what's most important for any type of organization, that especially I've seen from big into small, is what's their end goal. When you're hiring a volume amount of candidates or a specific niche or function, is one thing you get is if you don't have a aligned workforce plan and understand where you want to be as an organization, as in numbers, but as in a culture, is to really define, what the landscape will look like before the recruiting even starts. And then obviously have measurable metrics, but not just measurable metrics internally, but understand the benchmarks in the industry, understand, how difficult or where the talent pool sits, and have a very strategic approach rather than, hey, we got these roles and let's find them. I think things sometimes companies are more of in a reactive state, but I think it's ideal to use data, market intelligence, and do the research and build that. I would say that baseline or work plan to be able to get that intelligence, and then really build that sourcing plan and EVP to attract the candidates, because the first impression is everything. And if you don't do it right the first way, it can set you back for a long time.
Yeah, for sure. This is, I think, one of the benefits for some individuals that come from an agency background, particularly people that come from a contingent agency background, because it's really, that is like a pure sales motion, right? Where everything is about funnels and data and numbers and conversion rates and top win and loss reasons, and at least the firms that are a little bit better run, right? So taking that philosophy toward recruiting, that we should think about optimizing the recruitment function similar to how revenue leaders optimize sales and marketing functions, and we should be leveraging just as much data, technology, process as we see in these other functions. Yet I do see a little bit more of a disconnect where I feel like some recruiting organizations are operating how sales organizations were 20 years ago. I feel like it's not that the technology isn't there. It's just that I feel like maybe because it's just so fragmented and there's just so many different options on the market, people probably get a little bit overwhelmed. And I also think that, a lot of the emphasis is just on interviewing, empathy, soft skills, which is important. Don't get me wrong, but I think that companies, it's a missed opportunity to not invest in a better data and technology strategy. And I'm curious, just like, and these might be kind of obvious, but just to put them out there anyway, like, what are the most important data points that you're looking at? Is it like funnel metrics in terms of like volume of outreach? Is it conversion rates? Is it offer acceptance rate? Like, what are you looking at? Yeah.
I look at a multitude of numbers, but first of all, before everything even starts, is attrition versus attraction. Is retention. Is how can we attract if we can't retain? Is to identify internally, look at the attrition numbers and see why people are leaving, and get that data first. Whenever someone's looking at the social media these days, and checking out an organization and seeing a high number of people leaving, it's gonna, no matter how much funnels or technology you use, you're gonna be blocked by not working on the things that the negative things that are coming from the organization. I think the first thing to do is identify why people are leaving and why people are coming, and then to focus on those areas and emphasize on those areas, and work with the HR, the talent management, the hiring manager, and to build that culture where that attraction will be much more beneficial. And then that whatever technology you use to attract them, you want to be able to retain them.
Right.
Then areas like quality candidate, to see your recruiters, are they providing quality candidates based on the requirements? So time to source, time to select, time to submit, time to offer, time to hire. Look at all these segments as why are people falling off on the phone screen? Why are people falling off after interview number one? Is to really dig in deep and see where the bottlenecks are and where things are not moving from. And obviously, I think hiring manager, hiring manager satisfaction. Are we providing that customer service? Are we doing those intake calls? Are we involving them in the process? And basically, diversity, I think is a topic we'll cover later, but are we providing a diverse candidate slate diversity rate? Are we providing the right amount of diverse candidates for the organization?
For sure. And so the point that really, I mean, all of it hit home, but the point that really stood out to me too is evaluating top win and top loss reasons. So that's literally, as an executive or an advisor going into an environment, that's the first thing I want to uncover is what's the offer acceptance rate? Why are we winning? Why are we losing?
Exactly.
And on the attraction side and on the attrition side, I want to know why people are leaving, but also I want to know why are they staying? So looking at, both ends of the funnel, right? Or both ends of the journey, I guess you could say, the employee journey, top loss reasons, top win reasons as to why we're winning too.
Yeah.
And I usually say, let's evaluate the top three, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so if you can hit the top three loss reasons for both candidates and for employees that are leaving, or maybe just giving feedback on a survey or to a manager and haven't left yet, ideally, right?
Yeah.
Ideally can be a proactive motion before they leave. And if you can solve for the top three things, that's already going to have a significant impact. So
yeah.
I actually got a fair amount of heat when I pushed back. Something I posted on LinkedIn a while ago, in my opinion, offer acceptance rate is more important than time to fill, right? Because it's not only people
I agree 100%.
Right? Because it's
Yeah,
if you can't hire the people that you need to hire, if it takes 6 weeks or 10 weeks, you need the best fit person.
I agree.
Right. And then once you optimize for that, then you can make it.
That's a view of someone who's you figure out if someone's operational based or truly, looking to make the organization better. Someone's like time to fill, get them in. Basically, let's fill the seats as quickly as possible. That's staffing. That's not, if your time to fill that's your biggest case. Talent acquisition, it's acquiring talent, finding the A-level players that help your organization, get to that next level. So that's really kind of the spiel that I use with the hiring managers. Well, this is what we need. This is, we need, and obviously, giving realistic expectations, but different niche, very specific, technical or more high-level roles is being transparent, but educating them on the reasoning why it's important to find the best and not worry about time as much.
Right. And I think as recruiters, we sometimes fall in the trap, whether you're in-house or agency or whatever, of trying to fulfill the desire to accelerate time to fill, where it's we get caught up in, okay, the executives are just going to be looking at how quickly we can get somebody in the seat. And I think it's really important for recruiters and just talent leaders in general to stick to their guns and focus on quality. And if they are continuously receiving pushback on that, then maybe it's almost better to just try to find a company that understands versus, constantly spending half of your energy explaining or, justifying your actions to an executive team that doesn't get it.
Exactly.
Like that's a huge, and the same thing, whether again, like I'll see agencies on the agency side, companies that are bragging about their time to fill. Oh, we can get you an SDR or an engineer in 7 days. It's like, I don't care. What's the
Yeah.
lifetime value? What's the quality of hire? I need to understand references of customers that have been with you for years. I mean, that stuff is really important. You have to solve for quality first. And I think executives, like, to some extent get it, but I think a lot of the times they don't understand the opportunity cost of optimizing for speed before quality. Like, you have to
Exactly.
do it quality first and then speed, which
Yeah.
seems obvious, but it's not to a lot of companies.
And I think the speed comes, once you build that infrastructure, then implementing that technology. I think companies, a lot of, depending on who they are, always worry about cost and not investment. And just looking at, oh, this is going to cost this, but I mean, really, you build that in the technology, have the right data points, you can do everything quicker, better, cheaper, and faster.
Yeah, I mean, it's like an easy comparison would be like, if you're going to buy equity in a company, right? You could buy equity in a company that, let's call it, like, costs 5 units of whatever, or you could buy equity in a company at 6.5, but the return on the 5 units is significantly less than the return you're going to get if you invested 6.5 units, right?
Exactly.
So it's like,
Yeah,
you
that's
want
good.
to
Yeah,
focus, like, on what's going to help your company scale.
yeah,
And I don't
exactly.
care if your product or services, people are going to be what enables your growth, and is what's going to provide the best client experience and the most value to the customer. So yeah, I think data surrounding, again, just like top loss reasons, top win reasons, conversion rates, offer acceptance rates are the first things that companies, really at any size or scale, should be focused on.
Yeah, and I think one of the important things is that one thing I've also implemented is dashboards, on our ATS and recruiters, and really make data the culture. Because really, I mean, everybody see that the full layout. I mean, the recruitment team sees where everybody's at, know where they're sitting. The hiring managers have that visibility, and really just data speak for you. I mean, I think that's really important that everybody refers back to the system. Uh, Obviously, have to have it set up, the right way, and there's going to be some ups and downs. It's not, a picture doesn't always tell 1,000 words, but I think that's where the communication comes, and where and having that level of engagement that goes along with the data, and being able to articulate it.
Yeah, for sure. And it's also, the other reason it's just important to have the data and not operate off feel was, at one point, at some level of scale, that will break down, one. But two, when a talent leader is going to other members of the executive team, or speaking with a CEO, or maybe even a chief people officer, right? Having data is going to enable you to make the argument for additional budget, right? Which is usually what ends up happening, is companies optimize for time to fill, right? So they put in like a 6-week time to fill when it should be 8, or
Yeah,
hypothetically, right? I'm just talking growth stage tech SaaS for revenue and technical roles, right? Just to be safe and make sure that you have the right capacity planning. They're optimizing too short for like 6 weeks versus, let's say, 8, hypothetically. And then, so you're 1 quarter into the year and your whole hiring plan is complete, just like thrown out the window. And then you're scrambling to catch up on hiring. So then you hire a bunch of contingent firms that are providing you with B and C fit players, and you're
exactly.
paying 6 figures per month for low quality of hire, and poor experiences, poor candidate, hiring manager experiences, and frustrating everybody, including the VCs that have invested in you, that
Yeah, exactly.
want it done. So it's just, that's the issue. It's like this sense of urgency, versus, and I get it, but it's a huge disconnect, because when you're focusing on that stuff, it just your whole hiring plan, your budget, the capacity planning, the amount of recruiters you have in your team, how you decide to leverage vendors, everything is going to be thrown off very quickly. And that's what we see, like, isn't it? Most
Exactly. No,
companies, over half
most
of
companies,
companies get this wrong. Like, most of
exactly.
them do. It's like maybe 15%, I'm going to say, just like, that's
Yeah,
kind of my gut feeling.
only
Yeah.
that's, but I would say 10 to 15% get it.
Get it. Yeah. What the heck? What do your dashboards look like, by the way? What do you got going on?
I mean, for the recruitment dashboards, or
Yeah.
I mean, I have dashboards for diversity. I have, the kind of the, where application sources, the kind of the recruiters, how many interviews we got going on, how many hiring managers screening, like basically anything, a workflow of the recruiting process, and really just a breakdown of exactly, where we're at, and where we can see, where the bottlenecks are. And so I think that's where the engagement comes, is to be able to identify right away, why is this taking so long? Why haven't we gotten feedback? And find patterns and consistency that this particular group, this particular manager it's telling us the role is critical, but we don't hear back from them for 10 days at a time.
Right.
So
right.
it's really, we try to, what I try to utilize the dashboards anywhere we can find out what's keeping things on hold.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. And also like time and stage. A lot of people are like, well, wait, it doesn't time and stage. Shouldn't that be the priority over, quality of hire, offer acceptance rate? But again, when you're tracking top loss reasons, that's going to come out. That's why you always start with top loss reasons and conversion rates, opposed to like time and stage or whatever else, because a top loss reason will be like, oh, why are candidates, dropping out? Well, because they're staying in stage for 10 days when they could be accelerated to 3 days. Right. But yeah, I mean, I think, so like tracking. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. And especially with passive candidates, if you say I want an A player, and you're talking from a competitor at a high level, and you've, as a recruiter, built that level of trust, and somehow got him to send him your resume, and he's just sitting there, and they're gonna be like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And at that point, they're not gonna, I'm not gonna mess with them. I mean, it's a candidates market right now, and really, I think some of the, especially previously, I'm in biotech now, but coming from oil and gas, they always had that attitude of, if you want to work here, they'll make time, and that's not how it is. We have to, they're interviewing us as much as we're interviewing them.
Yeah, I don't get where that like sense of like the, I don't know if it's like egotistical or arrogance. I don't know what it is, but there's a lot of executive leaders that just assume like people should want to work here. And like, okay, fair enough, but no more than we should want to hire. I mean, it should be a give and take. It's like, it sounds like kind of like an abusive relationship. Like if you just want,
it's funny you mentioned that. When I used to work my GE days, we had a RPO that used to work for us, and they really liked the recruiter on the other side, and they wanted to hire this individual, and they were providing. That was one of the things, is they thought because of the brand itself that they'll automatically accept. And I was like, you got to talk to the guy, you got to see what he wants, his benefits. And the HR leader at that time, no longer there. We're GE. Why would he say no? Because he was working for some local firm, and he actually did decline. And it's just that. And I think companies are getting better. They're getting it, but kind of that old school thinking of we're the biggest, we're the best. That doesn't work anymore. There's a lot of really good. Yeah.
People want different things. Like you can't just see the world through your lens. You need to have a balanced perspective and understand. Take the time to ask, like, what people care about. And what are they? How are they making their decisions? Right. That's again, like I think a lot of their recruiters, at least like recruiters, not companies, but good recruiters understand that. Exactly. I think where the bigger breakdown is good recruiters don't necessarily know how to build talent acquisition functions similar to how revenue functions are built.
Yeah.
When it comes to data and optimization, like that's, to me, one of the biggest blind spots in our industry, in our line of work. So that's like why I'm so pumped about talking about this with you, because it's super helpful. What ATS do you use right now?
Right now, we are actually transitioning from, the company I'm currently at is a biotech company. And so we're using Bamboo HR, which is the most easiest, simple, basic ATS. But since our company is now growing, we are now transferring to Lever. I've never used them before. I looked at a number, a Greenhouse, and a couple. They were all great, but I just felt Lever was the right fit for our company at this particular time.
Yeah, Lever and Greenhouse. I prefer Greenhouse, but they're both like very, very good.
Yeah.
I think what you have, like companies have to decide is there's basically two types of solutions. You can get the SMB solution that works really well out of the box, but it's going to be terrible with data. It's going to be terrible with integrations. It's not going to have built out like roles. So manager, recruiter, hiring manager, like all of that's going to be kind of messy.
Yeah.
So all of that, and they're going to have like these little preset dashboards for reporting that are just useless. And so you can
Yeah,
go that, but it's out of the box. You don't really need implementation. You don't need
yeah,
somebody who like has a deep understanding of data,
yeah,
or optimizing talent acquisition orgs at scale. So you can go that path, or you can go the path where you get a robust solution, and that
yeah,
means that you're going to have to go through an implementation, and you're going to have to
exactly.
know how to set it up. So
Yeah.
it's like the trade-off between those two, but ultimately you cannot scale with just like an SMB out of the box solution.
No, I completely agreed. I mean, in the past, I've used, SAP Success Factors. I've worked with iSIMS. I've worked with UltiPro. I think it's called UKG now. Going back to Leo, Brassstring, but my favorite was always iSIMS. Wasn't a big fan of SAP Success Factors or Workday. I've not worked with it directly, but I've seen a lot of it. I like a lot of their data reporting capability. But our current organization right now, I think we're maybe 2 years away from such a robust solution. But
Yeah.
honestly, my favorite all the time has been always iSIMS, because it's a very easy, user-friendly, easy to use. They have really good data dashboards, provide all types of data filtering. I found it. You don't have to be an HRS expert to really configure it. So that's what I really enjoyed about it.
Yeah. iSIMS is more of like an enterprise solution, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I mean, like with Lever and Greenhouse, I think you can integrate like Tableau
yeah, you can.
for additional reporting. So I know like some of the late growth stage, like almost essentially like pre-IPO size tech companies
That's where
will
we have
do that,
pre-IPO. Yeah.
right? So they'll kind of have like a data stack on top of the ATS, which is actually something that I would love to have hands-on experience with. Probably won't at this point because my career is kind of going in a different path, but I would love to play around with that. Like I would
Yeah.
love to have like two data analysts like sitting on my TA team.
Have a data scientist. Yeah, and see,
Yeah,
when I was working
just
at Siemens, we had one. We
yeah.
worked with a data scientist team. But one of the things I also, and one of my some consulting that I did, is we work with UGK or UltiPro, and I work using Power BI is to kind of create some dashboards and reporting. And I think that was when you don't have an internal real good platform, I think Power BI is also a kind of a good tool to use.
Okay, nice. So when you had the data scientists, like what were they primarily doing? Like what did that role look like?
I mean, they basically kind of forecast our, knowing our workforce plan, be able to forecast our, future workforce, identify, age requisitions, what's sitting there. Like one of the issues was getting how many real roles do we have? And, what's the most critical, what's the most important, and what do we have to hire for? Not what we like to have, what we have to have. And really just do a flush, and it was in a global level. I mean, with Siemens is a big company, so really identify and really and get rid of all the telling the hiring managers, if you don't want to hire this in a certain amount of days, that these are closed and the budget moves somewhere else where it's needed.
Yeah,
And getting, I would say, the real number of the folks that we're trying to hire.
for sure. Yeah, for smaller growth stage organizations, like my go-to when I used to build myself out was greenhouse pipeline reports. I looked at
Yeah,
other stuff too, like a lot of other stuff, but just in terms of like I had this like tab pinned on my browser that I would just religiously view every day. Was a pipeline report just to see, okay, open recs, right? Filter by prioritization. I would create like custom fields so I could prioritize roles. So I'd just do like priority one roles, and we define how much capacity or how many openings we'd put in priority one. And then I would just view the pipeline, and I would see, okay, what's it coming up in stage 4 interviews, like final rounds, which we had labeled as stage 4s, and going through that and ensuring like reaching out to the right people to make sure that that's going smoothly and we're getting the conversions. And I mean, that was kind of like where I lived, but that was more of I could still do that in a talent leadership role because it was a earlier growth stage company. There comes a point where at an enterprise scale, you're not going to be able to just look at a huge pipeline report across hundreds of recs at once,
exactly. And I think one, and struggle, working at a startup, is they have a huge, startup budget, but the HR organizations are maturing as people are just, I want this role, I want this role, I want this role. And then we're not checking the budget. Now I've been kind of pushing back to, okay, check with the CFO, see the head count. And because later on, it's been kind of like a free for all. but I mean, it's a part of the growing stage of a startup. Is this really, no, you think you need everything, but you really have to decide what you have to have right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the hard part. That's something that, that's the executive team needs to figure that out, right? Like, what do we have to hire for first? Or, one of the things that you see at more of a tactical levels, do we want, 5 salespeople at a lower base salary, or maybe we should go hire 2 or 3 salespeople at a higher, more competitive rate. And I mean, obviously that impacts capacity and how much, for quotas and whatnot and future growth. But yeah, there's a lot of intricacies there, right? Which functions do we invest in first? What positions do we invest in first? What's the strategy? Higher salaries, lower volume, lower salaries, higher volume, right? How much process and tech we have built out in order to enable potentially people coming in if they're more junior. All of those things are, I mean, that's exactly kind of like what I'm focused on right now, scaling out Secure Vision, is making those hard decisions on, okay, what are we going to invest in first and what's the path? Do we go senior, junior? How many? Like, really thinking through that strategy. I try to keep it as simple as possible. And I try to say, let's hire fewer people, let's hire the best.
I agreed.
Right.
Agreed. And I also think I think one of the things with startups coming in is it was an agency's dream world, contingent, because startups don't know any better. People is really putting the hold on, all the contingent staffing vendors coming in. Of course, you want to use staffing vendors and use relationships, but I think, for a startup like ours, is very important to have that knowledge base. I say always have one hunter and one gatherer. And they work symbiotically, and train that gatherer to be a hunter one day, and
Right.
is really build that expertise in house, working in parallel with 1 or 2 hotshot, vendors that are doing really well for you. But really, I think the culture of, always depending externally, I think a startup should really invest in their in-house recruitment team or their own hotshot recruiter, and really give them and make them a partner in those conversations, and rather than always, going outside, getting a consultant and going and paying for that information externally.
Yeah, I think it can be a huge mistake to partner with contingent firms too early on without having the right talent leadership process and technology in place, because recruiting agencies are not incentivized for quality of hire. They
Yep.
are incentivized to go the path of least resistance. So if you are the path of least resistance, that likely means that you don't have the right checks and balances and process in place to ensure that you're getting the best person hired. And if you do have the right checks and balances in place, so it's not the path of least resistance for them, they're not going to show you they're not going to give you invest in you, because they're going to go
Exactly.
invest in the company that's willing to cut corners, because their revenue model is such that their expenses don't start at 0 every month, but their revenue does.
Exactly.
So they basically have to just, try to fill roles so they can be profitable. Otherwise, they're going to lose money. So if you're doing things the right way, you're almost going to be penalized working with contingent firms because
Exactly.
they're just
No,
not going
I
to make you a
agreed.
priority. So I think you need to have like the right leadership, the right process, the right tech. And then when you hit like Series B, Series C, if you've made the right investments and talent acquisition, then you can start to say, okay, let's augment our internal efforts, right? Our internal recruiters. Let's augment that effort with a contingent agency, right? And the other thing is when we're working with a contingent agency and you have the right process and tech built out, again, you have to, because like they don't see it as path of least resistance, you kind of have to sell them.
Yeah.
You have to say like, look, like here's the deal. We're allocating X amount of openings for you this quarter. This is our time to fill. This is the process. It's optimized. Give us feedback. We'll do a shared Slack channel. You really have to get that kind of level of buy-in to ensure that they make your team a priority. And then there's other options like RPO. Like that's what Secure Vision does. Like we provide basically companies borrow recruiters from us. So we have a different model which can be helpful too, because it provides a little bit more process and checks and balances in place for our customers than a contingent model.
Agreed.
So there's different things out there. Like I think it's about finding the right blend. But you're right, talent leadership should always be in house. I mean, if you can do kind of a contract if you're like really early, but ideally you have your talent leadership in house, and you have to invest in at least a small core team.
Yeah. No, and I'm actually a big fan of RPOs. I've worked with many in the past, But one of the things where I've seen a lot of them fail is if you don't make them an extension of your team. If you don't, of course, with the contingent law, you can't a non-employee. But my point is that they're your talent acquisition team. If you're in a full service RPO, they have your emails. There has to be transparency, and all they can do is they can help you. They can help consult you on processes, but at the end of the day, you have to give it to them, and they enforce it.
Yeah.
A lot of times they don't like throw the RPO under the bus. And I think that's where a lot of issues is really before working with RPO is to get all your processes and alignment in place, before using one of the services, because then you're setting up yourself up to fail
Yeah.
if you're truly not making them your partner.
Yeah. Or find an RPO or some kind of provider or advisor that can help you do that, even if it's not the RPO. It might be or might not. But yeah, so I think the common theme here, the takeaway for everybody listening is invest in process and technology.
Exactly.
And do it as soon as possible, because otherwise you're not going to have the right checks and balances in place to ensure quality of hire. Quality of hire can be difficult to measure. Don't even worry about it. Like just know that your quality of hire will be better. You will get better people having the right checks and balances in place. Like just to keep it simple, right?
And exactly, and quality of hire, and depending on what industry you're in, is subjective. I've seen hiring managers, look at CVs of an individual that fit all the requirements, on the job description, but we'll say, why was this guy? Why did it take him so long to graduate? And I'll be like, what does that have to do with anything? It was,
who cares?
And it's 10 years, experience already. There's so much subjectivity, and I think that comes with hiring manager training. And another thing is using AI, one of those candidate scorecards automation, where it does a screen of the resume and puts the highest rated resumes on the top. And some of those features that I've seen in some tools is awesome. In where basically those are kind of like a job scan, if you've heard of that before. And basically it does a match of resume to a requirement, and gives a rating score of how close the candidate is to the job description.
Yeah. So is that a piece of automation that your team's using, or what type of automation are you?
I've actually used that. I have my own personal account, so when I'm doing some headhunting, and kind of basically align it to the requirement, the manager, because it goes, say, a senior vice president of biomanufacturing, one of those very high level roles where it has a lot of content, and basically show this is your job description, and this is a comparison showing what your score is based on this. And I've done it on individual, kind of my own internal like executive search that I do for certain type of roles. It's actually been very helpful, because then it makes them take a look. Okay, maybe I need to change the job description. Or maybe I'm being too stringent, in my review.
For sure. Are there any other areas of the process that you recommend automation?
I mean, so many, candidate experience, doing surveys, inbound candidate sourcing. I think using knockout questions, pre-qualifications. I think that's very important, because, it's funny. I've used very high-end ATS, but when I came with the startup for the first time using Bamboo, had to go through 100 resume. It was like, oh my God, like what's going on? Is having that ability, Boolean searching, the sourcing, candidate automated pre-screenings, being able to send out a pre-screen, have them completed and send it back. The resume screening, the using the AI, the job scan that I mentioned for very niche, high level roles, and automated video interviews. I think I use one called HireFlix. It's been very helpful. Integrate with Bamboo, and then with Lever, and basically once a candidate applies, I can set it up to automatically send in a video introduction. And I think the Gen Z, or the millennial generation, they're much more they're much more appealed by that. The video interview, than getting a phone call out of the blue. People don't like to be contacted on the phone anymore, so they like to take that out of the way in the front end.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot. I mean, I personally believe that screening interviews are ultimately going to be like a thing of the past, right? Somebody's going to come out with a technology that basically candidates can invest in upfront, put all of the answers to all those different types of questions in there and then just submit that. I mean, that's just such an easy solution, which really, I don't know if there's something out there, but there's definitely an opportunity for technology when it comes to just shortening interview processes by sharing data just without actually needing to verbally communicate it.
Yeah.
Right.
And
I mean,
I think the technology cuts through the bias, because if someone's not smiling or not having eye contact, for whatever reason, it could be a bad day. I mean, by answering, the pre-screen, doing the technology, it puts the person through, which theoretically, some people would be eliminated on a phone call,
yeah.
depending on that situation. I think I've seen that. I've had phone calls where I've had, they caught me at a bad time and I had to answer a question and then I was gone. If I had a pre-screen where I could fill out the information, I would have killed it.
Right. I mean, the whole thing, like, oh, the person took an interview in the car. It's like, okay, yeah, fair enough. Not ideal, but you don't know what the heck you have no
Yeah,
idea what's going on. They could be sitting outside
exactly.
a hospital. You don't know. And
Yeah.
maybe they don't want to tell you and they don't owe
And
you
they don't have to.
anything. You're a freaking
Exactly.
stranger,
Exactly.
like, I mean, you're right. There's just so many opportunities. I mean, obviously there's also algorithms can be biased too. And that's something that, it needs to be monitored by a human on the other end that's educated to these things. Right. But yeah, there's definitely so much more room for automation than I think a lot of orgs are doing. And then that's again, like people are like, oh, what if you lose the human touch? It's like, no, that it gives your recruiters more time to invest in the relationship. More of their less of their time is spent doing admin tasks, and more time can be spent on getting to know the candidate, not asking the candidate like, oh, tell me why you left this opportunity and why you decided to accept. I mean, all that stuff, like all of it, right? Like all of this stuff eventually, to as much as possible, should be done a different way, I think. And more of the conversation should be around getting to know the human on the other side of the phone or the other side of the Zoom, understanding what really drives them, what they're passionate about, learning about that, talking to them through, the alignment, right? And again, some of that can be shared in content developed too, but I think that that's again like where the highest impact time is for a recruiter, like talking through what other offers are you considering? How do you rank these opportunities? Are you at offer stage? Where are you? Right.
Exactly.
That type of stuff is what we should be talking about, not
Yeah.
just checking
And
boxes, right?
and one of the tools that I love the most, and it's not it it's a data analytical tool, and I think companies should do more, is talent mapping, is getting that competitive intel. And not all companies can afford it, but Gartner Talent Neuron, man, it is one of the most awesomest tools I've ever used. And working at Siemens is, when you're starting, to recruit for a new market, I mean, they'll give you the data to forecast, your future workforce, identify locations to, help consolidate your footprint, find hidden talent pools, analyze, you can put in your own data and analyze, competitor hiring trends compared to yours. I mean, so
Yeah,
it really gives that, I mean, of course, like I said, it's for bigger company, but it's one of the best, most amazing tools that I've ever seen. And it really gives you, to identify, do I have the talent, in this particular region, to hire here, or should we build a remote team? I mean, it gives you
right.
that really, there's more talent here. It's probably better to keep them here and hire here than being able to try to, one of the struggles we have right now is trying to get people to relocate to California. Everyone's moving to Texas. Our company is based in the Bay Area, with the cost of living and everything like that. And we've seen Tesla come to Texas. We've seen Dell. But I mean, it's really finding that, what are we open to do? And that whole comes with, the post-COVID era remote work and hybrid work. But I mean, at the end of the day, you have to there is a talent pool somewhere, and, these competitive intelligence tools can help you find them.
So just just in terms of takeaways, what are the names of the tools that you've used? And
Gartner Talent Neuron.
Say that one more time. Sorry.
Gartner Talent Neuron.
Okay, cool. And then any others?
There's another one called Brightfield's Talent Data Exchange.
Okay.
And it's a data analytics platform. It converts like raw transaction data. It gives you insights, how to develop, validate, and modify your, workforce acquisition strategies.
Love it.
Yeah.
Any others?
There's one I used with an RPO. We used, what do you call I lost off the top of my head. MSP provider I used to work with. Sorry, yeah. They
Okay.
used to IntelliReach. TapFin was a company that a great company. They create transparent analytics, comparative benchmarks. They need to execute the workforce strategy. They digitize, tools to inform about your company spend, calculate ROI, and drive efficiencies. And another one, I guess, would be a total workforce index. It kind of gives it's a weighted. It assigns the equal weight, to each the four categories: availability, cost efficiency, regulation, and productivity in your recruitment process.
Love it, love it. And I don't think this one is yet as robust at this point in
Yeah,
time, but LinkedIn Talent Insights is another
that's
tool
right.
that's coming up, and I think at some point that has the potential to be even more impactful, just because of the sheer amounts of data that they're going to have at their fingertips. But again, I don't know how robust it is compared to these other tools where their entire business model is around this,
Yeah.
right? But definitely worth taking a look at. And we have about 6 more minutes before we got to jump off. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about diversity, equity, inclusion. What are how do you think about diversity in terms of talent acquisition? Where do you start? Like, what is the starting point?
I would say the same, similar to attraction and retention, is to really do a deep dive analysis. Is looking at the target groups. I mean, obviously, you want to be diverse for everybody, but when you have diversity goals, you want to really look at your organization. Like, say, within oil and gas, I think the hard part is that you don't have the culture for minorities or targeted protected groups. You want to have you want to work on everything, but I think when it comes to your actual stated company goals, target female in tech, veterans. I think it's a slow process because you have to build the infrastructure internally to retain and want more of these diverse groups to come to the organization. One example, working in oil and gas, in one of my previous companies, they were very early in their diversity stage. They're like, hey, Nayeem, we want to post this, use this content, but we didn't have the culture. We had, when we hire females, we didn't have the environment for females to succeed. And we weren't accommodating to single moms or working moms. And is that we can post all the pretty things and all the nice pictures and all the nice content, but at the end of the day, we have to have training. We have to have, programs, policies to help retain, female talent. I
Yeah.
said is doing the get an understanding what our current landscape is, and before really, and then really target what the industry benchmark is in goals and the percentage number, but then where we're at and where we can realistically get to. Having a very strategic approach, a strategic plan, and realistic deliverables, over I would say diversity journey or a maturity model where we target a particular segment, and then once we built that infrastructure, we move on to another segment which are probably much more, I would say, difficult or haven't been doing before.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And there's two main things that I've seen over the years pretty consistently as well that I can add to that for our guests, or excuse me, for our listeners. One is one of the pieces of feedback that I've received a couple times by what I would think is well-intending people, but maybe just that aren't educated in this. They think, oh, we're too small to worry about this right now. When we become, when we hit 300 employees or when we hit 500 employees, or then we can start to really invest in this. But we just don't have the bandwidth right now, and we have to get there before we have the opportunity to think about these things. And that's from having spoken with a lot of experts in talent acquisition and people functions and high level people that are very successful in this field, they all agree that the earlier you get started, the better. If you the earlier you can get started on diversity, equity, inclusion is going to make it easier if you're building it from the ground up, right? When it comes to representation and building inclusive environments and getting employee feedback to create balanced perspectives and certain benefits that are going to help inclusivity thrive, like those things, if you can make it a core part of the fabric of the company earlier on,
From
it's
day
going to be,
one.
yeah, like
Exactly.
easier. And also referrals, right? Like, just think about if you don't invest in diversity, diverse people are going to know other diverse people, right? They're going to they're going to have worked in organizations that prioritize diversity before, right? So you have to kind of think about, like, if you don't invest in diversity, then, you know, the referrals that you might get might be people that are all come from a similar background, right?
Similar background, exactly.
And so then it become that starts to snowball. So that's one lesson learned. I think it's like the earlier you can get started, the better. And then the other thing to keep in mind is that things that do not seem correlated to creating diverse and inclusive environments often are. So when you think about remote work, for instance, like that drives inclusivity and gives equal opportunity to a lot of people that may not have the luxury of being able to travel into the office space, things like that. Other benefits packages, like, you know, for instance, childcare, you know, stuff like that, where there might be people that otherwise could not take advantage of working at your company. So we should really be thinking about our benefits packages and perks from the perspective of how can we create an inclusive environment where people can join us from different walks of life and thrive, right?
I agree.
So those are just two mistakes I see.
Yeah, and I think also what would be successful is, I think when you always include talent acquisition, you know, as a function with diversity, you lose the focus. I think a diversity or a diversity function should be, you know, kind of parallel to TA, where there's a very, you know, one individual or group of people that are completely focused on the work and collaboration with TA, because I think it kind of gets lost in the weeds with a lot of, you know, other different priorities, you know, when it's with just TA, because I think diversity goes hand in hand with talent management and talent acquisition. And I think if you had someone that was focused just for diversity for both, you would get a lot more commitment, because they're getting their own budget, and being able to truly build that culture both internally and externally.
Yeah, I think really to move and make significant progress, and maybe it's even beyond DE and I, but just in general, you need executive level buy-in.
Exactly.
Like you know, it has to be a cross-functional thing where this is a core value or expectation that leadership has or supports or whatever, right? I mean, you have to have that level of buy-in for it, because again, you're right, it doesn't just sit in one function.
Yeah, I mean, they can provide. I kind of have that the 4 pillars of diversity. You know, the leadership involvement, education and training, retention and development of diverse talent, and then policies and procedures. I mean, and that all ties in together.
Yeah, that's actually really great. I'm gonna say that future. Perfect. Well, look, this is fun. We're coming up on time. This has been a great conversation.
Yeah,
we're gonna be asking you to come back, because I feel like
thank you so much.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about a lot more. This has been one of the this has just really got me excited. It's got me thinking about what I can go back and implement as well. So thank you for taking the time to join us today, and I do hope to see you again real soon, and hopefully you'll become a regular guest on the show.
No, I look forward to it, and I'm honored. And James, I learned a lot from you too today. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And for everybody tuning in, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Take care.